Welcome to episode 93 of the Road is Dead podcast. I'm Rob Curtis here with
Tim Strelecki.
And out in Colorado.
You have Mike Friedman.
And
Here.
Leah is not joining us today. Got some things going on. But apart from that, not a whole lot new. There's some stuff in the industry that we'll kind of hit and cover here in a second. But wanted to mention, I was sitting here before I came up here, and on my Facebook memories, I'm running through this, whether you like Facebook or not, that's beside the point. But on mine, I've been on there for quite a while, and my memories now are showing me a lot of interesting things, and it's specifically this month. So I was looking just now, and all my memories are full of our race weekend that we'd always put on that would have happened this weekend, this last weekend, usually a 13th, 14th range in time for the month. So there's a lot of interesting things going on there, and a lot of cool stuff that I see. And it's just kind of weird because this is technically like the first year we chose not to put on the race. And I got to say, I'm sad we don't have a lot of events, and I'm nostalgic for our race, but I'm not necessarily missing putting it on, if that makes sense.
You don't feel
maybe that's
you don't feel any agony for putting all the work into it and then not running it? Because you must have put a boatload of work into putting a race on.
Well, it wasn't just me. I mean, it was everybody. We had a lot of
so then you have other people's time. Yeah.
But it's not like by not putting it on, we've lost all of that somehow. We have all those memories, and we had all those events that happened, and I think a lot of people had a lot of good memories from it. So I don't know that I never ever actually officially announced that we weren't doing the race this year, but I just kind of figured everyone figured it out from looking at the schedule, not seeing it. To me, when a race announces that they're canceling it for the year, that they're not putting it on or whatever, it's akin to me. It's like when somebody's on Facebook and they have to make a post on Facebook that they're leaving Facebook. You know, it's kind of like, you could just leave. You don't have to necessarily make a big deal about it. And especially when
it's always
you're
good to see
choice.
It's always good to see what people's responses are.
Yeah, but when you're making that choice it wasn't like people like to get. The reason why I don't like making those announcements, and I don't like those announcements, is because when you make them, people somehow feel weirdly obligated to try to tweak out what the reason was because they think maybe they can fix it and still have the event. And the reality is people just, that's their natural tendency to want to say that they want to fix it, but they really don't want to fix it. They really don't want to put on the event. And announcing something like that and then continuing to have the event is this like weird
feeling of guilt
to try to get people to show up from
feeling of guilt. Yeah.
And I think I have done that in the past. I have said, hey, we're not going to do this if people don't show up, but it's not like, I'm not looking for that. I'm not looking. And I said last year, hey, the numbers look weird this year. So if you want like this race or you want to do it, this might be your time to do it because it may be the last year we're doing it. So I gave that warning last year, and I figured that was good enough. So I didn't actually do any kind of formal announcement. People get weird about it. Like I got emails from the ICA side of people going, "Hey, I noticed that a lot of road races have disappeared this year." And I think it's all because of money. So can we figure out a way to get more money? Stuff like that. It's like people kind of they fill in their own logic for why things didn't happen. And I don't know if I've explained it here, but the reason why we stopped this year was because the prices tripled to quadrupled in terms of the cost to us. And the ridership was just down to a point where it was kind of like, why are we blocking up a whole neighborhood, incurring these thousands and thousands of dollars of costs
and
time,
90
to 100 riders throughout the entire day. And that's not accounting for double and triple entries. That's just,
dude, putting on an event
for the day.
Putting on an event like a bike race, dude, there's so many different facets that you have to consider. I mean, when you break it down, just to even get to race day, let alone having the course and the setup and the registration and the bathroom access and the parking, and there's a lot that goes on to that. The permitting, there's a lot that goes into it, putting on a race. So,
in all fairness, we had it down like clockwork because we've been doing it for so long. We knew all the people to call. We knew all the things that we had to do. So for us, the work level was much lower than it would be for like a new event or an event that was constantly changing and becoming a little better every year. I mean, in all fairness, we just stuck with what worked and what we had. But I mean, we had to get together. We had to send people around the neighborhood every year and knock on every single door in the neighborhood and put a flyer on every door and talk to every resident so that we personally inform them that they can't come out of their house between these hours on this day.
You can't leave your home.
That's the way they took it.
Yeah.
The reality is you just can't drive your car, on the course between these hours. And even then in the later years, I mean, in the early years, we had like, okay, there's a large siren horn that's going to be put off by the officials. And 1 means that the course is clear. 2 means that the course is closed, and every resident had to know this. And once they heard the air horn, exactly. And once they heard the air horn, they could drive on the course, and it's like, I mean, like the first few years we had to have the McHenry County, God, what's that? Like it's when something big storm happens or like a emergency crisis response team or whatever. They had this big bus and they would drive it in. And in this bus, they had all sorts of communications technology. They had like storm and Doppler radar and all sorts of other stuff. I mean, they had all sorts of emergency response stuff in this bus. We had to pay for that bus to be there.
How much was that?
And it was a few $1,000s.
Seems reasonable.
And sure, if we need it.
Yeah.
We were paying for
for that device that you described.
Site.
Sorry.
Right.
For the thing you described,
ambulance to be on site. We were paying for 3 to 5 cops, I think. And then the emergency response bus, which came along with like 10 people that were running it and using it. We had like 4 different agencies out there. They all had different, frequencies and stuff that they were working on. And we had to have a preparedness meeting and coordinate with. Dude, it's a short crit up a little hill. Okay. I can say this now that we're done because I didn't like to talk about it during the time, but we had few to no accidents and wrecks during all the years. I'm sure somebody will come forward and say, oh, I wrecked there. There was nothing memorable that happened there, at least in terms of injuries or anything else like that. So as I took it over, we slowly went from having to pay for all that and have all those people involved. We got rid of the emergency response bus. And then eventually we got rid of the ambulance as well, too, because it was like, we haven't needed it. We don't need it. There's a hospital that was like 3 minutes down the road or 5 minutes down the road. I'm like, we can call 911. The cops are here anyway. We kept the cops, but we were down to like 2 or 3. And just even being down to 2 or 3 and having their rates almost doubled and just the rate they get paid per hour. And then the Public Works would do all this stuff for free for us. They would put out no parking signs. They would do we had bleachers that they would haul in. They would mow the field that we were in so that it was short enough that we could park on it. And also had the bleachers.
This is a lot to coordinate. Just in coordination of that alone. So everything you're describing.
All of it, they would bring in trash cans, trash bags, and then they would remove the trash when we were done. We would go in and set up a stage. But all of this, towards the end, the ICA bought its own stage, so we were able to start saving on our stage rental. Every team can use it that has access to it. And we weren't the reason why it was bought, but it did save us like a $300 rental every year. We were able to reduce the amount of hay bales and straw bales that we had. At the beginning, we were over 100, and they were going for like $3 or $4 a piece at the time. And then you also had to pay for
delivery.
You
got to move that. Then you got to move it.
We had to put them. all throughout the course on every single mailbox they required it. The village did when we first started. Every single mailbox, every single phone pole, everything, lights. And by the time we got done, we were down to only using 10 or 15 bales just at key points where we knew it was going to be a danger. And which was nice because straw bales had gone up to almost $6 a piece. And we were able to actually borrow and reuse some from a race last year.
So how did you pay for all this? You have rider injury.
It just all comes out of my pocket. It comes out of my pocket, and then rider entries would pay that back. And
if enough came.
Day, right. It's a great day when they even out. You got to buy numbers, $100, $200 for numbers and pens.
So you were, what was the entry fee for 100 people? You said 100 people were showing up, right? Roughly?
Yeah, I don't remember. It was I raised it, I think the last year, maybe $5. So I was in the 30s for like almost every entry fee. I think some of the longer races were like 40 or 45 at the most, maybe. Day of reg, I added, I think $15 to day of reg because it was like, you should pre-reg so that I got an idea how many people are coming.
Yeah, it helps a lot.
Please do pre-reg,
Yeah.
But then there's a discount if you register for your second race of the day. Each field has a different fee. When you add it all together, and it's like, so somebody may register for one field beforehand and they pay $30 or whatever. And then they show up and register day of, and they want to pick up another race. Well, that would have been $45. But then you had the CCC was doing your second race was $10. And so everybody would come out and go, yeah, it's just $10 for the second race. Right. So, and for a long time, if they confuse the person working at reg, then yeah, they'd pay $10 and they'd race for the second time instead of paying the $45 for the day of entry. And so it just,
So how much were you losing? I'm curious. I mean, everything you just described, wait. Everything you just described takes an immense amount of effort to coordinate and plan and implement, depending on what you're trying to implement, and a cost. So yeah. Like if you're not, where else were you getting money from other than just racer registration? Because you just gave a very good breakdown. Sponsorships?
Yeah, team sponsorships.
Sponsorships.
We have sponsors for our team. And I have a bank account for the team. So money that we get from those sponsorships annually, and we used to get a lot of sponsorships. We're down to quite a bit. I think we've only got a couple actual paying sponsorships anymore. And they're really just people that are associated with the team or have been with the team for a long time. And it's a nice write off for them.
Mm-hmm.
It's more just kind of out of the kindness of their heart. But we had team sponsorships would go into a fund. Any entries that we would get through the year for any of the races we ran got dumped into it. Any expenses we had for it would get written out of the back end of it. So it all kind of like just jumbled together and was hard to get like a race per race or instance per instance kind of thing. Because there's other stuff like, I had to buy a new tent this year, or I had to buy a heater, 12 cylinders of propane for, national championships. Geez, that goes in there. If we would have a meal that we would pay for volunteers. Volunteers would come out and work a race. Afterwards, we take them out for a meal, and pay a meal as a thank you. Some stuff got paid for directly from the team stuff. Some stuff would just get paid for by me. Then you have to pay USAC, and those fees have gone up to about $5 a rider.
So what are we saying here, Rob? What are we saying here? Are we saying for people not to do races, or what are we explaining?
Not at all.
I mean,
what I'm saying is I'm trying to give everybody kind of an idea of how big it was. We usually broke even and I consider breaking even being $300 to $500 lost to $300 to $500 gained. I consider all of that break even. So $1,000 swing.
Mm-hmm.
Made money, lost money, whatever. It's a wash. And I always said, I'm willing to pay that to have a party somewhere where all my friends showed up and they get to ride bikes, So I don't consider that like a loss. So we've always been in that era of that swing. And a lot of times, because we would make more money on like a CCC race or a cross race. So that money that we would make would go to help putting on the road event. And that was just kind of seen as that's what we do. And Interesting. We just got a comment on the last video. Just showed up on my YouTube. So, sometimes we would make, so that's why I say it's all kind of a wash. It just kind of all filters out in the end. There are many, many, many years where I wrote checks out of the business to pay for hanging on fees. Because in other words, like sometimes we wouldn't find out about like porta potty fees until the end of the year when the village would get around to like billing us.
Dude, like $180 a week.
For what?
Porta John, at least for a Porta John for me, whether I have it for a day or for a week.
Yeah. When we have them show up, we were 100 for a long time, and then now they're up to like 150 per porta potty. And then the hand washing station used to be 50, and now it's like almost 100. And you got to have a hand washing station if you're going to have a food truck show up, and there's all those things. But anyway, we would normally get it would be a wash. And it was a wash when we were paying the city, I want to say like $2,000, right around $2,000, $2,500 in that range. And that was mostly just for the cops. And then, and it had been as low as like $1,500. And then after that, we were on a promise to the village to take anything that was quote unquote made by the race and split it 50-50. So 50% would go back into the team coffers, and the other 50% would go as a donation to the village. And it ended up going to the 4th of July fireworks fund that they have.
I'm looking up the comment. I'm looking up the comment.
It would go to their 4th of July fireworks fund. So, we were, the last year that we did it then, the pricing that we had to pay, it's because Public Works had never charged us anything. All of a sudden, and that included for the porta potties. They didn't charge us for the porta potties. And then this last year, they charged us an appropriate amount. They charged us for the porta potties. They charged us for their time in setting up all the stuff and putting out all the signs, charges for the signs, charges for the mowing it and everything, the trash removal. And it ended up being between them and the increased rates on the cops. We ended up owing the village like $4,000 instead of $2,000, which was enough to just be like, we lost money last year, but like I said, it was kind of in that $1,000 range where I didn't really kind of care. But to continue to do it, it's like, yeah, I can continue to use team money and just kind of squander it like this. Or I can look at the big picture and say, people don't want to do that race anymore because it was too hard. So that's why we made the choice to do that. It not necessarily that it was too hard, just the people that like that kind of race don't exist around here in enough numbers to really make it a viable event.
Yeah, based off
because a lot of those people
alone.
that are wanting to do it are out doing other things now. So it was this time. It's got to run its course, but. Why was I? So I was seeing a bunch of memories like that. That wasn't the point of my conversation. I think we've covered this multiple times, but I was seeing a lot of memories from our race, and during that, something popped up, and it was something that happened 13 years ago yesterday, and it was a post that I made on Facebook, and it said, "Mike Friedman is in the break at the Tour of California," and I wanted to remind you of that and ask you. Do you remember that? And can you tell us anything about being in that break? I think that was a day you were in a break for a long time, and I think it was raining maybe. You were in it for most of the race, if not the whole race.
Yeah, we went pretty early. I don't remember exactly where we went, but I was riding on.
You guys went early, yeah.
Kelly Benefits, I think, at that time, which was right when I was having my iliac artery issues going on. It was like the onset of it. I remember. I don't remember, man. I mean, I remember we almost got to the line. I remember that, and I was fucked. Yeah. I was really, really in a bad spot. There was a photo somewhere of it. I don't know, of me in death mode. It's interesting. Yeah. Your suffering has different phases. You have you're in it and going for it phase, right? Where you're really jamming hard and suffering because you're pushing fucking hard, jamming the 5311. And then you have the suffer phase where you're completely blown out, and like just smashed, where you can't pedal normally anymore, and they're very different suffer faces.
Yeah, there's like I would summarize it and see if you agree with this, but like there's the O face where you're giving it your all, or you're pushing, you're attacking, you're laying it out, and then there's a survival mode like death stare.
Well, you're just empty. Yeah, you're just empty. Yeah. It's interesting. I have a couple of photos where it's actually, I actually talk about that in terms of mindset when I teaching my kids. Sometimes I'll pull these photos out and show the difference. It really depends on the level of kid, because it can be a little bit up there, but in terms of practice and patience and perseverance, it's like, I did it. I got up every time, that was me, but yeah, it's funny to actually just go back in time and think about it. I don't forget. It's just a chapter of my life, and it's hard to reflect clearly. Like I see photos, and it's just so strange to think back on that life of racing bikes around the world for 32 countries. I mean, I lived it for a long time, but there's a couple times I was really, really fucked from racing, where you just bury everything, empty tank, everything, right? There was, Head Volk was one, Stage of California, the Olympics, Paris-Roubaix. I was pretty smashed after Flanders, pretty smashed after Milan-San Remo, but yeah, I don't know. It's interesting to reflect on it.
Yeah.
But
and it was also interesting because I flipped through, the next memory was the same year, your brother at my race riding a Garmin bike with a Garmin helmet and his number pinned upside down.
Yeah, well, it ran in the family. I mean, they made fun of me growing up. Everybody made fun of me growing up. I grew up in Western Pennsylvania. So, in high school, I was the only kid shaving his legs, and I was the only kid, wearing spandex, and I was the only kid, riding a road bike to school. And yeah, but it's also interesting to see how people change when I started getting better, and started getting some like publicity for it. People change, which I thought was interesting. It was a kind of interesting social experiment that I understood pretty early on. But that's, dude, I mean, that changes throughout your life, though. It's just a temporary thing, depending on what you're doing, So I personally am more private than I realized in terms of what I share. I get on here and it's whatever, but it's changed over the last few years in terms of my,
how open you are. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have seen that. I would agree for sure. But speaking of Joel, he ended up texting me like 8 times last night. He was putting new cables on his bike, and he's going to go out and ride. And he was asking me when the group ride is.
That's awesome.
That's awesome until he shows up and hands me my ass on the first time he's been on a bike in a while on the group ride. But hey, I'm climbing more, and you know what? It's a bit of your attitude, Mike, that's got me climbing a bit, because it's just kind of like I do it and I go, well, I'm not going to die. At least I hope not. But, if all goes well, I'll still be okay at the top of the hill. Who cares how long it takes? Who cares what I end up doing? And I've actually been surprising myself quite a bit.
What mindset are we talking about? Just the positive?
Just that just like what you were just saying, where, you get up. What you've been saying.
Yeah. I mean, you got so much time to do it. It's like.
Yeah. And that was the other part. That's actually been playing in my head a bit. As I realize, as I look at my salt and pepper that's coming in, it's coming in here. I'll never reach your level of salt and pepper, I don't think. I think I'll skip it and go straight to gray.
You didn't spend 8 years as an alcoholic.
Oh, man, dude, I don't think people understand it, to be completely honest. You don't think about it that often. Your time being like a finite thing. I mean, it comes to mind, but when you really think about it, it's like, fuck, dude, it's like you got this amount of time to do whatever you want to do with it. Let's go,
Yeah. And it dawned on me, I'm never going to be 48 again. So
you're as young now as you're ever going to be. 5 minutes from now, you're older, literally older, physiologically and like time wise.
Yeah. I'm officially at that age where if I actually spend time trying to sleep in or be in my bed longer, I end up hurting something. Like resting can hurt me just as much as doing something can.
No.
So, by the way,
I can
understand. Get there.
I can understand that. Dude, I've thrown my back out brushing my teeth before. Put me on the ground and I was just brushing my teeth, okay? You know, I am definitely, age is a funny thing. My body has changed in the last 5 years from 35 to 40. And I know that I'm still young, but it's just a funny thing to track within yourself, and to see the changes happening relatively quickly. When you look in the mirror and you see that you're gray or that your teeth are changing or that you have psoriasis all the fucking sudden. And, you're like, or, you find a lipoma and you're like, what the fuck is that? Like,
yeah,
what I'm saying is time's an interesting thing and you only have so much of it. Sure. So you got to utilize it and you got to hit the gas and fucking go. The comment was saying I didn't announce that it was going to be an explicit podcast. I really, really have to work on not swearing. But it's hard for me. It just comes naturally.
No, there was some more. There was another comment out there too, but
I'm sorry that I swear. If you're playing this in front of your kids, I will try not to swear. It's not appropriate. Sometimes it's appropriate.
You're not the only guilty party.
Yeah, no, we all do it.
Besides, who's listening to this in front of their kids? Maybe. Yeah.
I occasionally
I'm not swearing anymore. I'm not swearing anymore.
No.
I'm not swearing anymore. That's it. Kids involved, done.
I got the kind of kids that can be around swearing.
You do.
And yeah, and I try to limit it when I'm in front of them. Believe it or not, much more than my parents ever did. My parents didn't go all in with every word, but like my mother was an artist with the word shit. It was her absolute favorite word, and damn it, and she could weave it into any conversation subconsciously. She tried to be prim and proper and nice and everything. And whenever anything went bad, she'd go, well, shit. That was her statement. Mine's hold on. But yeah, but my kids, I mean, I don't have kids that swear. That's one thing where I understand it's more common now and it's more accepted now, and I don't want to pass judgment on people. I've just always told my son, I'm like, when you're younger, if you swear, people will instantly judge you, and it will lower your value in their eyes, whether it's warranted or not, or fair or not.
There you go.
It's just going to happen.
There you go. And however few people or however many people watch this and then they hear me swearing or listen to this and hear me swearing, instantly thought less of.
No. It's mostly on the kids' side. As adults, we learn when to apply it, and I think I
probably do it too much. Anyways, moving on from the swearing. From this point forward, it stops.
So speaking of getting older, Wahoo has gotten a little bit older. So Wahoo, if we've all been following along, Wahoo's had some problems, financial problems. They've gotten into trouble. They are basically they're in really bad shape. Well, it turns out 3 months ago, when we were talking about them and the problems that they were in and that they were going to have to go bankrupt and reorganize, turns out all their debt was sold off to 15 different banks. So apparently, and this is all in a DC Rainmaker article, if you guys want to go out there and read it, and maybe I can link to it in the show notes. But basically, they had when they were always run by the owner, the guy that founded the company. I don't have his name written down. My apologies. But the guy who founded the company was always privately doing it. And then in 2020, when they hit the pandemic and their demand shot through the roof, they needed money to manufacture more. And in order to get that kind of money, it was just time to consider other funding options, which included kind of selling out the company into private equity. So they sold it out to private equity, but that sell-off came with debt. And that debt wasn't large to begin with in relation to their sales. But the other debt that private equity firm carried, along with then the tanking demand in that market, which happened in like 21, ended up creating a scenario where their debt load was non-serviceable. They couldn't continue to service their debt load. And but it had nothing to do with the actual company making product and how well they were doing. They were doing well. So it got to the point because of the relationship with private equity where they had to publicly report their debt and their serviceability of their debt. And somebody's going to correct me on all this, but they were sold off. Basically, the banks that were carrying it called it and bought out their debt. And the original owner decided to come back and get together with two other investors and bought all of it back. So the company is now back in the hands of the original owner. It has quote unquote zero debt as of now, and they are still serviceable and making a profit like they always were, and looking forward to what's changing and coming. So they're hopefully going to start reinvigorating, reiterating, integrating what they're doing, coming up with small incremental changes to what they've been doing. It's time to see some changes to some products. Their lawsuit against Zwift isn't going well at the moment. For those that don't remember, Zwift came out with their hub trainer, and there's a lawsuit between the two saying that they impinged on Wahoo's patent. But there's some argument on that. So far, it's not going Wahoo's way in that lawsuit. But that trainer market has dumped. We all know. I didn't know this one until I read that article, but Kurt Kinetic sold off during all this. They sold to another company. We all know that Ceres was put up for auction, and they were bought out of a debt auction in Wisconsin. So now they're owned by another company. I believe is another private equity company. So bad news in the trainer market all the way around, but Wahoo seems to have now weathered it.
How did they get out of their debt? I don't understand what you said. The banks bought the debt?
And I could be completely wrong on this, but from what I understand, the banks that were carrying the debt load basically took over the company in exchange for the debt.
Of Wahoo, the company that Wahoo.
Yes. So Wahoo was then split up between apparently 15 banks in some sort of like joint ownership. And then apparently the previous owner made an offer to that joint ownership to buy the company back.
So the banks just keep the debt? How does that work?
Well, it's through whatever happened. I'm sure they took a loss or whatever, but it didn't look like the company was going to survive doing it the way they were doing it. So the previous owner made an arrangement with two other investors to buy the company back, whatever those terms were. They were not disclosed.
Yeah, that's interesting. How do you do that without filing bankruptcy? Like, how do you lose?
It's kind of. I mean, I'm not. Because the debt was created
by another entity.
By them buying the company from the original owner. So the debt was almost to the original owner, if you really think about it.
I don't know the full ins and outs of who bought what. Maybe this is where I'm missing it. But where did they incur $250 million in debt? This is when I thought another company bought Wahoo, or did Wahoo bought another company? Who bought who?
Roan Group bought Wahoo a couple years back, 2020, late 2020, early 2021, I believe.
And Roan is who had the debt.
It's a private equity company. And as part of that deal, they created a debt load.
Okay.
And that debt load coincided with the downturn in demand in the market. And
what is a debt load? I just said okay, but I am not understanding what that is.
They incurred debt to buy the company.
Okay. All right.
So just like it's more complicated than this, I'm sure, but imagine it if they took out a loan to buy the company.
Yeah.
It's not.
They didn't have the capital to purchase the company outright, so they took on debt to purchase the company, thinking that it was going to be more successful.
To go and buy a new product and to pay off this or do whatever, pay for lawsuits.
Yeah. Okay. I got you.
Operational funding and cash. And then whatever arrangement they had to get that debt, they were incurring fees on top of that. You got interest, whatever else. And paying off your debt load every month is servicing your debt.
Yeah.
So, in other words, if we use God, I am not a financial guy.
I'm curious of what the whole process actually is. I mean,
well, let's talk about it like a car or like a house. So in essence, they had a monthly payment right? And your payment includes principal and interest.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't able to keep paying it.
Yeah, of course.
Every month.
$950 million. What's the interest rate on that? How much is that a month?
Well, they have it somewhere. I saw there was a.
I mean,
huge
yeah,
network.
I would be interested to see what that is. Just an interest alone. What is the interest on a loan payment for $250 million?
And it's not as simple as a loan.
So
either.
I find it
there's
interesting. They took
other
out
financial vehicles.
a liability
this.
to buy a company that was liable, but they had great sales at the time. So when you're selling
They had great
$500
sales
million
at the
of product,
time. They were going in the right direction,
Yeah.
and the original owner needed more money to be invested into the company so that they could fund
growth.
that growth. So we can argue
And
whether
then the
or not it was
market-
the right call at the time.
Well, then the market got saturated with all these high quality
Right.
products that are badass, and don't break because they're reliable as heck.
And then
I just
Swift
swore.
came in
Yeah.
and cut them off
Yeah.
at the knees by offering a $500 trainer.
Yeah.
I
I think it's interesting that was the guy's name Chris Hawkins who
I think
founded Wahoo?
something along those lines. Yeah.
I think it's pretty rad that he bought the company back. I don't know what the whole stipulation is, but I admire that.
Well, like I said, so at some point their inability to pay it, just think of it as the company was repossessed. And then now let's just say in a repossession auction,
they bought it back cheaper.
The original owner
Yeah.
came in, and guess who the other two partners are in this
I
rebuy?
have no idea. I have
the
no
original
idea.
owner,
Michael Jordan.
Roan Group. So the original private equity group that bought it and got into trouble with this debt load is now once again a part owner in the company. And I don't know this guy, but maybe you do. David Wickman from Human Powered Health.
No, that's interesting. I mean, Rowan had to learn some lessons, so I don't know that that's necessarily a bad sign. It is weird how the financials all played out on this. Someone lost money.
Yeah, I'm sure the original owner couldn't get the anybody to sign off on that level of financing without other partners.
Yeah, I mean,
but anyway,
again, coming back in with the partners, even jumping back in, just shows that I'm excited to see what comes next. Hopefully, something good comes of it. I mean,
that's kind of my overarching tale with this is that I think that they got put in the wrong position financially, an unfair position because it was a good company with good products, had good sales, and was going in the right direction. During all this mess, they had to cut out all of their sponsorships or any out-of-line expenditures. And now they are back in a position where they're in a cash positive flow, and they're able to actually expand, build, and grow. I think it's great. I think that a good cycling company is now in a good position again, and I am excited to see it. They are also predicting, along with other trainer companies, they are all predicting a pickup in growth going into the off season this year that will match and or exceed what we would consider to be a traditional growth in the trainer season. So, in other words, they don't see the flat to non-existent demand that we've been seeing. They see more of a return to normal demand levels.
Probably because everyone needs the newest.
That, they see a slight increase in that as well too.
But yeah, I just wanted to say, I understand why your efforts into that race and then what you were bringing back in, one is losing you money, and two, I can't imagine how much planning goes into that. I mean, I know how much planning goes into it just from doing Pedaling Minds, right? It's a lot of different things, but when you list off, it's not the same scale. So when you list it all off, it's a lot. And, it's a bummer that you weren't getting more riders from the audience that's nearby, but there's not that many riders nearby. I think what you listed off was a great list of all the things you need to start to consider when you're putting together a bike race, because there are those communities where bike racing can be a really highly valuable asset to the community in terms of depending on how you do it. Right. So,
yeah, sure.
I think anyone who listens to that in terms and talks to promoters and other promoters and creates a plan, I thought it was good insight.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it wasn't just the money. And it wasn't just the ridership. It was a combination of like everything. The fact that we've been doing it for as long as we have. The last time we did it, we had residents that were starting to complain.
Yeah, that's a problem.
You add it all together, and it was kind of like, why are we still doing it when we don't have that many riders show up? And it's the kind of crit where people decide they either like it or they don't, and we're obviously down to roughly 100 riders that want to do it, and that's not really enough.
Yeah, it's not
So
enough.
do we
Yeah.
do we continue to do it for the 100 riders and double the entry fees? Because
Is that what you were actually getting? Was 100 riders? It was just 100 riders?
I don't remember. I would have to go and look. It was either just below or just over 100. It could have been like 120. It definitely wasn't 200. That's for sure.
I admire anyone who puts on a bike race and does event planning. I mean, it definitely takes a business savvy mindset to be able to put it all together, I think.
That, or it takes an unending
planning
of
event
enthusiasm.
Yeah, but also, problem solving too, and understanding what goes into the event,
But enthusiasm can cover all of that in the short term. They may end up losing their ass, but at least they will make a great event happen at least once. You know? We aren't in this industry known for being a lot of very accomplished business people types. We'll say.
I know a few, I think.
In the racing and promotion industry, there's probably more because there are people that have real jobs that then come out and just do races. It's I don't know where I was going with that. But anyway, heading back real quick to the Giant. This may not have made a lot of news, but in January, Giant made a roughly $10 million, $20 million offer to Stages to buy roughly a third of the company. And apparently this offer was because Giant is the company that's been building their Stages indoor bikes, the ones that they use and offer, which apparently has been a fairly good business for them in Stages. So Giant was like, why don't we just buy a part of this action? So they went ahead and they put in an offer, or they were in negotiations to buy something like 34% of their stock. Giant just announced that they are pulling out of that deal, that they are not going to continue negotiations, that they are not going to continue talks, and they are no longer interested.
That's a dire change.
Yeah, and it was that hit the news one day before Giant came out and said that they were down roughly 9% in the EU in sales for the first quarter, and they were down something like double digits, 10+% for sales in the United States for the first quarter of this year.
So they did their math, and then just was too much of a liability to take on.
Yeah. So this is on top of Giant announcing last year that they were having that they were not going to pay their vendors for the first quarter. They were going to delay it one quarter. So this is on top of also not paying their vendors for the first quarter and pushing those bills to the second quarter. So not a lot of great news. And they keep swearing financially they're in fine shape. The fact that they called off this deal is probably an indication that they're probably fairly fiscally conservative along these lines. So they may be very well run, but it's a definite indicator of some things that are happening in the market. In addition, though, I think, and I've been finding, and this is completely anecdotal based, but I've been making a lot of phone calls. I've been making a lot of phone calls to a lot of shops so that to remind them to buy their buttonhole chamois cream. Buttonhole chamois cream is available at, if you're a shop, you can give us a call at enzocyclingproducts.com and let us know that you'd like to be set up as a dealer. We'd love to set you up with some product. If you're a consumer, go to your local shop. Ask them to stock it if you don't see it on the shelves. But anyway, I've been calling a lot of shops, and a lot of them are now, for like a month or two, everyone's just been like, yeah, no, we're good. And now I'm starting to see shops go, you know what? It's like the floodgates open. Something happened, and it's more than just the seasonal change. So it's actually starting to look good for some shops, which is a good sign. I don't know if they're necessarily selling bikes, but they're saying they're getting the people in the door. They're getting repairs, selling parts, doing accessories, things like that. So maybe there is some good happening in the industry, which is interesting considering our current financial status in this country.
Well,
But-
you're saying all kinds of stuff.
Hey, got to throw it out there.
Yeah, I know.
Just
It's all good stuff. It's all good stuff. I'm glad that business is seeing an uptick, you know. I think it's about encouraging people to get on their bikes and consider riding their bikes for the summer. You know, take your bike to the shop, get the tires pumped up, make sure it's shifting right, get the brakes working correctly, and get on your bike this summer. You know, buy some buttonhole chamois cream if you need it. And, you know, to be honest,
Absolutely.
so far, you know, Rob, it's been you and I talking. I haven't even heard Tim's voice yet. Tim.
I've said a few things.
Okay, you're right. You did.
I'm just
Yeah.
listening. I'm just listening.
Okay.
Well, this isn't really my arena.
Well, you do. You know, I think just getting people on their bikes. Get on your freaking bike. Get on your bike. If you haven't ridden your bike in 10, 15 years, or you know someone who hasn't, encourage, spread the message. Let's go for a bike ride. And if they don't feel safe, practice a couple basic drills. I mean, if you know how to ride a bike, think about what you need to go. You know, if someone can't ride a bike, that's a different level. But if someone hasn't been on a bike for a while, you know, don't be afraid of teaching some basics.
I actually took my wife out on a bike ride the other day.
How'd you feel after?
How did I feel?
Yeah.
I feel normal. Like I.
You, how do you, okay. How'd she feel?
Yeah, no, she enjoyed it. She had never ridden at night before. And so we used it as an opportunity. It was on May 4th, Star Wars Day. And so we went, by the way, a sad note, but to mention May 4th, instead of being Star Wars Day, it really should be MCA Day, because it's the day that MCA from BC Boys passed away. But we went to a local, like I said, sad note. BC Boys, by the way, been watching a lot of stuff about the BC Boys lately. We went to a local place that was doing a Star Wars trivia night. And so we rode it. It was close enough. I was like, let's just ride out there. So we rode our bikes out there, knowing full well we'd be riding back in the dark. And when we did, we were riding at night in the dark. Julie's never done that. And or she kind of did it on one gravel thing, but not like on a path in the woods. And, you know, it was on roads and stuff. So she was
It's like an
genuinely freaked out.
Oh.
And me, I absolutely adore. Riding at night is some of the funnest riding I've ever done. I absolutely adore riding my bike at night.
It does change. It changes the perspective completely. You can be on the same trail and it feels different just because it's just different. It's dark. Even if you have a good light.
You can see less. There's less people out. There's less cars out. There's less activity.
It's quiet usually, depending unless there's wind. You know, we get a lot of wind here. Yeah.
And if you're riding on your own, you know, it's some definite. She liked it, but it was just different. She was freaked out about the fact. I mean, all the deer that were on the path. You know, there's all sorts of wildlife comes out of the woodwork at that time of night, and there were a ton of deer. I had to use the restroom on the way, and so we stopped it. There's a boat ramp, and there's a restroom there, and we turned around. We both put our lights out into the field that was right next to it. And there was a raccoon.
Oh, raccoon.
There was a raccoon climbing out of the trash can that was right there. And it stopped and it turned and looked. And at the same time that it turned and looked, we had like 5 other deer that like turned and looked at us all at the same time.
Yeah.
So
it
anyway,
sounds like you guys had a great experience riding in the dark.
we had a good experience. It was fun. I love riding at night. But Tim, you're going to do your part tonight. You're riding with us for at least for a little bit. Yeah.
It will not be in the dark. I do not ride in the dark.
You don't ride in the dark at all? You do have a light with you.
I'm sleeping. Yeah? I enjoy my sleep. I sleep.
I don't blame you.
The time for night riding is really in the fall when it's dark early.
That's true. That's very true.
You know, now you're riding till 10 o'clock at night. Well, not quite, but getting there.
No, I don't ride in the dark.
We'll have dark at the very end. It'll be setting at the very end of the ride for us, because it sets at 8:08 tonight. And that's about when we usually get done with that ride.
I don't have a speed limit, so I'll ride as fast in the dark as I ride in the light, and I'll end up hurting myself. So I just don't do it.
Yeah.
You don't have a speed limit?
Yeah.
You sound like one of my kids.
I just go. I just go.
It's awesome.
I love it. But I've got tons of lights, so I can see everything. For the most part. But
the lights are nice. Yeah. They're definitely, technology and the lighting has definitely come a long ways in the last 20 years. That's for sure.
Oh, yeah. In the last 5-6 years. It's crazy.
Yeah.
The kind of lumen that I used to have to pay $500 for and have it be like in a huge package with an external battery and everything. Now I get like 5 times that. It costs a quarter as much, and it's, you know, mounted on the bars. So it's the tech has changed a lot, and I really do. It's been nice. But anyway, we're going to call it for the week. Nice that everyone could join us. Keep listening to us. Go out and subscribe. YouTube, obviously. Leave a comment wherever you get your podcast. We can be found on any audio podcasting app and or on YouTube. You can always look at the video one on YouTube. If you have any questions or comments or any ideas for anything, please give us a shout out at roadisdead@gmail.com. All one word, road is dead. And
yeah, I mean, people should comment. Yeah, people should comment. So we have, I would be interested in talking. I've enjoyed going to see that comment on that post to see.
Oh, I thought I'd share most of the comments with you, but we get comments for sure. But it's a lot of them are just, hey, great episode, or something like that. So not all might. I don't share all.
Yeah, what do you want to hear about? Yeah, let's put some thought to something people want to hear about. Like,
well, I'm waiting for the comments when we finally get Justin Williams to comment that we should shut up about Legion because we don't know what the hell we're talking about.
Is that post up yet? I've been wondering about that post too.
Ours is up. He got into a fight with NorCal Cycling apparently, and which is interesting because NorCal Cycling stays with Leah when they come in town for the Intelligentsia Cup.
I didn't hear any of this.
I'll share a video link with you in the past, but it's interesting that Justin's position was basically that you should shut up unless you're a pro. Like you have no right to tell Legion anything about what they are or are not doing unless you're a pro. So apparently all of us have to shut up except for you, Mike. You're still allowed to talk.
You should make a video, Mike.
Yeah. So anyway, thanks for tuning in.
Yeah. Well,
thanks for listening to the episode, and go out to pedalingminds.org. Familiarize yourself with Mike's program out there, and if you feel so inclined, drop $1 or $2 to help the cause.
Donate or sponsor, yeah.
Thanks for listening, and enjoy the ride.